Hi, Joe. Thank you for accepting to come here in this space to share your journey as a coaching supervisor.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Hmm. Um, Joe, I would love to hear a little bit about your background and how you got into coaching in the first place.
That is a story, a marrying of experiences
Mm.
and a journey. So I actually started out before coaching was coaching, I started in social work in America. So I was actually working within marginalized populations, and specifically with women and children in the state's Children's Protective Services Program. And I began there rather informally coaching, but learning the skills of coaching because one of my roles was family preservation. So they began to train in techniques like solution oriented intervention and this kind of thing. And as it life went on and I moved on, I moved very heavily into health and wellness coaching. I was actually a fitness professional and a medical exercise specialist and opened a gym
Mhm.
because I wanted to find equity in access to health and wellness. So I had this, what my husband would call, it was trying to run a nonprofit for profit. So it
Mhm.
was a cooperative space that brought together the extremes of haves and have nots. At one time in the gym, we'd have service workers and people who work night shifts right beside people who were investment bankers. And it was just an amazing experience to work with these minds and bodies. And as time went on and on, moved in to health coaching, gave up the gym. That was hard. That was about almost, I don't know, maybe over 20 years of my life trying to massage that population to provide services. And really began to see again disparities in how coaching was being handled across different populations and audiences. So, specifically across race and culture, even
Mhm.
in how in health coaching, it was the idea that there was this one way to do it. So, I kept
Mhm.
moving and then moved into, finally married it all into diversity and inclusion coaching and working with different populations and executive coaching through organizations. So that's how it sort of evolved over the last, oh my gosh, I don't want to give any dates because then you'd know how old I am, but over 20 something years. And each time seeing a need, taking the skill and advancing it, seeing the need, taking a skill and advancing it. So my approach and passion for coaching has always been from a service standpoint versus a luxury commodity for executive leaders and corporations. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yes, yes, it's a beautiful, beautiful journey. I can see how you went from working with the mind, then working with the body, then bringing them all together, but always underpinned by the diversity, culture, race, working with inclusion,
Yes.
right?
Yes. That became the underlying kind
Mm-hmm.
of, the weaving that went through it all was that it was always with inclusion. So now, I am still working and going through supervision was a big step for me to keep impacting the field because at some point it has to be from individual to a system. So I
Yes.
began moving into supervision and becoming very interested in that when I began to mentor coaches and educate coaches and facilitate their learnings and still seeing gaps in um, the cultures of the coach as a person and the cultures of the client and cultures of systems and organizations. Just
Mm-hmm.
fascinated me.
Yeah. How did this decision to train as a supervisor come about in the space that you were
Mm-hmm.
in?
I think because of my work at Coach Diversity Institute, which is my passion place. I'm one of the senior instructors and lead facilitators there, and I write curriculum. Kind of going through the racial reckoning period in America, and then seeing what coaches were facing. So our classrooms at CDI were very, very diverse, and seeing how even though people want to say it doesn't matter, the idea of this myth of, oh, if I'm good enough, I could coach anybody. And I started to think, well, could you? Can we? So I wanted to move into a space to understand more about the intersections of what was actually going on with coaches and their clients and the
Mhm.
coaches within themselves. So it's sort of this natural progression because as they shared, mentees would come back and then share difficulties or situations. And I thought there's got to be a there's to be a better way for me to pull this together to be able to handle that. So I
Mhm.
pushed into um, supervision, and I started with Association for Coaching,
Mhm.
and I did an intense program through Association for Coaching that sort of whet my appetite. And then when I saw the ICCS, I was like, I'm in.
I see, I see. And how did coaching supervision impact your approach to coaching, um, to how you work as a coach, and you personally, on the whole system that you were part of, the whole school that you were training in?
It had a profound and I think irreversible impact. And what I mean is that it's sort of that adage that once you see something, you cannot unsee it. And it
Mm,
was clumsy at first, when you're sort of beginning to widen these eyes and these lenses and how you see things. But then when you start to unearth it, it definitely has an impact in terms of the ability to have multiple lenses operating at the same time. And that's something I think that's I don't know if it's a compliment. Those are words that come back to me from either students, mentees, and other coaches. What is this ability to see at different levels, to be curious at that many levels? So it brought even more personally for me a sense of it moved humility into peace and confidence. Always operating, wanting to operate from a more humble space, appreciating the person in front of you, but then the confidence to see that I could move beyond that, to appreciate what was happening in each of the systems within the system and change the way I responded. Became much more curious, became much more confident, became much more challenging as an
mm,
educator. So I work with the ICF and I'm on the global ambassador team for NALAC, North America, Latin American, Caribbean, and became very, very direct, but not confrontational about the need for change in the curriculum. So I began to look at the coaching industry as a system within itself, specifically the ICF. And as I mentored people toward credential and skill, began to see holes that I don't think I would have been as confident in naming without having gone through supervision training.
mm. So interesting. Confidence and courage.
Yes.
Being more courageous, more brave in the work that people do. It's a feedback that we receive very, very often from alumni and
Mm-hmm.
qualified supervisors with ICCS is this, and the word freedom.
Yes.
Confidence, courage, or being more braver, and freedom. These words are very, very often mentioned. But freedom is in terms of releasing some of those self-imposed or industry-imposed shoulds within
Yeah.
coaching. If I don't do it this way, then I'm not coaching right, or I shouldn't go outside of certain boundaries, or and it's a bit freer that work. It's released some of those pressures. Um,
Absolutely. While I was going through the program, I'm sort of moving and on. So I myself, and I, like many coaches and an educator, independent contractor working within systems, but my coming through the program, I really pushed into who am I as a coach. So I co-founded a company called Adaptive Coaches, and we are in our infancy, but our tagline or our thing is coaching at the speed of humanity.
Interesting.
And humanity moves slowly and deliberately. It brought an intention back. And for me, on my side, my role in adaptive, I'm very, very tied into curriculum and education. So it's coaching education with the consideration of humanity. And it pushed me going through that, months, almost a year long reflective process to actually be case studying myself and case studying other coaches, and then being able to see what could be missed. And then to be now in a space of developing frameworks for the industry that I'm getting ready to put out there and put into white papers and tools, because it's not okay for this to stay just within supervision, and it's we have to do something with it, right? We have to
Mm.
have an impact with it. What do you share it with those that are willing? So it changed the way I educate, and it changes the way I mentor. It changes the way I prepare people for credentialing, especially MCCs, situations like that, and really looking to push coaches beyond what I say the script. There's got to be another way to go
Mm.
beyond the script. And I get pushback for it. I can
Mm.
be challenging because the industry would like to say, well, there are no scripts. But then I say, how true is that?
Mm. Love it, love it. It's so interesting. The impact of supervision is so obvious. It seems like it really contributed in so many ways and impacted you and your work in so many ways. If we go back a little bit to your journey to becoming a
Mm.
supervisor, you mentioned that you started the training with the AC initially, and then you saw the ICCS course. What attracted you to ICCS?
The depth of the program.
Mm.
So, without turning this into a coaching session, I did have a lot of limiting beliefs. And as a woman of color in America, uh, some may agree, some may not, but your credentialing is important. I have to work oftentimes twice as hard
Mhm.
and go to different levels than quote unquote the average to be respected and recognized in my field. I have to move for more. That could be a limiting belief. That could be my reality. It is what it is. So the rigor of the program is what attracted me. And I felt that it was something that I was going to invest in, but it was almost an exercise in my own tolerance for how much I could sit with what I didn't know,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
the program is so long, right? And so intense that it was absolutely manageable, but it took intention. I had to be intentional about it. You couldn't just show up for some webinar. And that's
Mhm.
what I seek. I want that in-depth learning.
Mm. Were there any moments, Joe, when you found that um, they were challenging or surprising, you didn't expect to experience something or learn something throughout the course?
Mm-hmm. I think the most diplomatic way for me to put this, Andrea, is that the learning itself, I loved. The resources, the research, all of this, I loved. I was surprised to, as the program grew, be able to witness within the supervisory group itself the differences of culture and coaching. And because it was an international group of us coming together, to be able to even appreciate supervision in action within ourselves and within the group. So being able to be in places of discord or disagreement,
Mhm.
and being able to be in a group and watch how that was managed, because that's something that is not necessarily spoken about in coaching circles, especially in higher learning, that there are moments of discord and disagreement, as we would say, rupture, and the coaching space, coaches don't often find themselves or expect with others that you could actually experience rupture amongst each other. there's this idea that coaching is this sort of sacred understanding place. But
Mhm.
I think my experience also showed me through that process that humans are humans no matter what, and people will differ no matter what. And there's no right or wrong or blame, but the ability to see it happening and to be able to respond to it, or be learn how to respond to that first with ourselves, was amazing. So that was not, it's not going in for a cookie cutter experience, I guess is what I'm saying.
Mhm.
But many programs, it's everyone's in agreement, everyone's smiling and learning and curious and asking powerful questions. But when you really work in the supervisory space, there is so much happening and shifting, I think, for individuals within the space simultaneously as the learning, that there may be points of tension or rupture.
Mhm.
And being able to actually experience that as yourself in a global environment in the mid 21st century with coaches was sometimes surprising,
Mhm.
but also something that is not made, we're not usually made aware of. Coaches aren't supposed to disagree,
Mhm.
right? We're supposed to exist on this different vibration. So I really appreciated, in retrospect, the ability to be in a professional space in which things weren't perfect all the time and there was yet still learning.
And sometimes we learn most from the most difficult and challenging situations, right? And
Yes.
although they are not pleasant in the moment, and ideally we don't want to learn in those challenging situations, but I think the learnings come, the deepest learnings can come from those
Yes.
situations. And it's as you said, you learn in action, observing what you want to take further, what you don't want or want to avoid to do in the future, or it's yes, it sounds like a very rich.
It
Um,
is. It wasn't sanitized. And I
mm,
think that serves on a lot of levels for our group, so global, that
mm,
the being able to have that many different cultures or experiences in the room was amazing.
yes. And Joe, I'd like to thank you specifically for sharing this because a feedback that I got, I have a lot of conversations with people who are considering coaches who are considering to train as coaches, and they have a conversation with me about ICCS being one of the
Mhm.
options. And a feedback that I get often, they sometimes watch these interviews.
Mhm.
They say I really appreciated the genuine and authentic conversations and feedbacks that you have in these interviews. And I think this is so important to show the experience as is and not show maybe one side that's a really good side or a really to really show the experience as it is without the fluff, without the raw, right? The
Yeah.
raw, not
Yeah.
sanitized, I think is the word
Not
I
san-
can
yeah.
use then. And
I say, yeah, not
it's so
sanitized, not
important.
because we don't work in a world that is sanitized.
Mm,
And the more you can be in spaces of difference, the more you can learn.
mm, mm,
And I think that that is for any coach or any supervisor. Otherwise, we are working to
yes.
a scripted world, and transformation doesn't happen there.
No, right.
So I really appreciate it. It was tough at times. The program is rigorous, but um I really, really did. It incited me to move to even more study, especially the final capstone projects,
Mhm.
the reflective increase. It really pushed me to go deeper, even when the program was over.
Mm. Those inquiries tend to be quite challenging for some. The writing piece, the essays, I personally found it challenging but extremely useful. Especially the ICCS approaches. It's not a tick box exercise. It doesn't have to be an academic essay. It's more of a self-reflection, honest and genuine self-reflection on your work, on your being as a coach, on your journey with a client. So I'd like to ask you a little bit about the people that you work with, your supervisees. What kind of challenges, who are they, and what kind of challenges do they bring to your sessions?
Um, they are all different. I'm not, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not one of those coaches that work specifically with one type or one organization, right? So my supervisees are from students or participants, adult learners in coaching education to one-on-one. I find very interesting the spaces of people working in people and culture roles.
Mhm.
I find,
It's not necessarily purely coaches, but could be um, leaders, HR, or learning
yes,
and development representatives specialized in working with different cultures, or is that
yes,
the case?
yes, and improving communications, and also, even though the whatever you let's just pretend that we actually still appreciated what inclusion meant, or diversity, equity, inclusion still means today, and will remain and continue to mean. Before that was sort of erased on this side of the ocean within the last several months, in this time and political climate, specifically coaches who are practicing coaches who serve clients of different races, backgrounds, and ethnicities. So I find very interesting white female executive coaches that are highly trained, who will present challenges of how they coach or show up in front of white male executives, the
Mm,
shifts that they noticed within themselves, and then take any color like white or black and just keep changing it from coach to client, client to coach, to this to that, to this to that, and across differences. And the idea of what is the coach bringing to the table or withholding because of the client sitting in front of them. What is withheld or what is brought forward because of the client, whatever they look like, sitting in front of them. And to say that the physical appearance um, is, or the culture, the whatever you want to call it, is not relevant, it is.
mm,
And so it is relevant. We must recognize ourselves again to that raw level of everything that we are when we sit in front of somebody who is different than we are. And what different means every single person in the world, but some differences are more obvious than others.
mm, mm, mm,
So I work a lot. I tend to draw coaches that are seeking ways of understanding what's happening with themselves in situations of difference, power difference, role difference, um, authority. How do I show up in front of one client versus the other, and why is that happening for me?
mm. And Joe, how did supervision equip you with some of the skills to hold this space?
The patience, the humility, and really stepping into the service of the supervisee. And what I mean by that is that simple question: what is it that you're needing from me? So, to arrest any assumption of what my role might be as a supervisor, to consistently push back and noticing again what's going on with me, and being very clear on what the supervisee is seeking, because I may want to give a lot
Mhm.
as a mentor and educator, but is that temperance of really the only thing that you can give is what is really important for them to take away. And it's the ability to sort of walk within those roles. In what ways do I need to be an authority on things when is that being called forth, or what are you really needing me to facilitate here,
Mm.
and what it was the expectation.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Joe. Um, what do you love about supervision?
That's so selfish of me because what I love is the space to go deeper. So while there's the work of supervision, but then there's the internal ongoing journey of supervision. So it feeds my excitement for learning. And the more I learn, the more I want to learn. That is what I really love about it. And on a one-to-one basis, the restorative nature for coaches.
Mhm.
It's almost like these things these people bring forward have been uttered in no other place. Just to the trusting relationship that has to be there between me and a supervisee. They will bring forth things that have it's sacred. They've never been spoken aloud. They have never told anybody, I'm struggling with this because it's different than mentoring. So that restorative space to me is also a passion place. The humanization of coaching is what I call it.
And coaching can be a
Yes.
lonely role. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and supervision can be a very vulnerable space, as you.
I'm surprised it is, so still slow coming into United States. And I'm still running introductory experiences for coaches who have no idea. Though they've been practiced, they've never been in a supervision. And when we actually go through I will offer a very small, tight, maybe 4 people experience. It is the one guy I did like a couple of weeks ago, this one, Andre, he's like, what is happening here? Like they're coming in thinking that it's like, I'm going to give you skills and tools. And when
Mm,
I totally turned the lens, it was on camera. It was a virtual group, but he was visibly uncomfortable. And he actually said, I am not sure how I'm supposed to be in this place. I don't know. These are challenging, very simple, challenging questions, though, right? The very basic thing, the idea of what do you mean? I'm here for you to give me something. The idea that you would bring yourself fully into it was hard. And then as the introductory group, although they had prep, when it came time for someone to share something or someone to bring something forward, I had to give it some space and silence because all of a sudden, seeing what's the expectation on paper or
mm.
how the group runs, and then sitting there for the first time, it was like, hmm. So when the first supervisee said, you know what, I'd like to try this, and she brought something forward. Well, then it was like, we're running out of time now because everyone else was like, well, what about me? What about me? I said,
Mm. Mm.
you know,
The importance of experiencing something, right? As you said, on
yes.
paper is one thing, reading about it is one thing, but then to actually experience it can be
Mm-hmm.
something completely different. Um, the what are your future? What's the future holding for Joe in terms of supervision?
Um, this will continue. This is really, I mean, where I'm moving. And I want to knock on wood because I love coaching, and I believe we all need to remain in that role of coach to practice in a multitude of roles, whether mentor, educator. You need to be out there doing the work. But supervision is definitely my passion point, and it's becoming, I realize, for me, difficult to separate it from other roles. I have to do so rather intentionally because not every space calls for that need or that desire from me. But it has enhanced, I think, everything that I keep thinking about, even the way I facilitate education. I am so much more aware of what is happening in a space from having gone through a supervision, training, and then being, you know, the rigor of it to practice it. So this is a space I continue to grow in. I am actively creating curriculum I am actively stepping into research, although I am not a researcher. I am taking that confidence forward and say I'm noticing things and I now have more questions about where the industry is headed and how we educate coaches and how we educate coaches today versus where we were. And I think this is important because again, it's the speed of humanity and there's a human being sitting in front of you and it has to go beyond do no harm. There has to be a way to provide good. And I think without coaches being in spaces to check themselves, you don't know if you're doing harm. You don't know. You don't ever question yourself. You're siloed between you and your client. So that lens must be put into everything, even in training. To be able to bring a supervisory lens to training to really understand that it's beyond checking a box.
It just shows how much responsibility comes with supervision, right? Responsibility towards the supervisee, towards their client, towards the whole system they are part of, and towards the whole of the coaching industry.
Absolutely. I think that it elevates that one step further.
Mm.
I mean, I just cannot imagine practicing even and being unchecked.
Mhm.
You know, it's literally going unchecked because where does the feedback come from for coaches? Is it a measurement of satisfaction from a client? Is it somebody signing up for more sessions? Is it a shout out on LinkedIn or, a testimonial? Where is the internalization, the intrinsic work of reflection?
Mm.
It's not often done.
Definitely. Joe, what would you share with a coach who's considering to train as a supervisor?
I believe that, unlike our credential levels, that supervision doesn't necessarily belong in a leveling system. So I'm thinking, for example, a quote unquote ACC or new coach, right? I want to say do your work first because you need to have practiced hours and, don't plan on just, I see this out there. I'm going to sign up to get a credit or a supervision, whatever tag or certification without really understanding what it's about. So number one might really understand what it's about and submit yourself to supervision first. Because again, like everything, there are things out there named supervision that are not supervision, and you know that. There are coaches practicing within this space and using that word to describe that role, to describe themselves when they, in fact, are not certified, when they, in fact, have not been through a process or the depth of the work that for them to be in a position of advising others. So submit to yourself first. And then this isn't about how well you do it. This is about how willing are you to reflect on yourself. The more you are willing to reflect on yourself and step into this journey as not something that you can get or go for, this is the ultimate commitment to the industry and to yourself in terms of how we should be growing ourselves as coaches and educators.
Such a beautiful way to end this lovely and insightful interview. Joe, thank you so much for your contribution.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure. And I look forward to working with you soon.